Some couples in the spotlight look perfect from the outside, polished smiles, coordinated appearances, the kind of love story that gets told in glossy magazine features and morning show segments. And then there are couples who carry something far deeper underneath all of that, something quieter, something most people never truly get to see. Jenna Bush Hager has spent years being one of the most recognizable faces on American television. Warm, funny, effortlessly relatable, she has a rare gift for making people feel like they are sitting right across from her, sharing a cup of coffee and talking about real life. And Henry Hager, the man who has always been standing beside her, has been exactly that, steady, present, the kind of partner who never needs the spotlight to prove his worth. But here's the thing about people who seem like they have it all figured out. They rarely do. And Jenna and Henry are no exception to that truth. Because behind the laughter, behind the beautiful family photos, behind those easy smiles on national television, there's a story that most people have never fully heard. A story about pressure, identity, sacrifice, and a bond that was tested in ways that would have broken most relationships apart. What is the secret that Jenna Bush Hager and Henry Hager have been quietly carrying all these years? What happened behind closed doors that shaped who they are today? And why does it matter more now than ever before? Stay with this, because what you are about to hear is not what you expected. To truly understand Jenna Bush Hager, you have to start not with the television host, not with the best-selling author, not even with the daughter of a president. You have to start with the girl who grew up knowing that her last name would follow her absolutely. Everywhere she went, she was born into one of the most recognized political families in American history. Her father, George W. Bush, would go on to become the 43rd President of the United States. Her grandfather, George H.W. Bush, had already served as the 41st. From the moment she was old enough to understand what that meant, Jenna Bush was living a life that existed in two very different worlds. The private world of family, warmth, and ordinary growing pains, and the intensely public world of scrutiny, expectation, and unrelenting judgment. Growing up in that kind of environment shapes a person in ways that are genuinely hard to articulate. Every misstep becomes a headline. Every stumble becomes a story. When Jenna was in college at the University of Texas, she faced very public attention over personal choices that most young adults get to navigate quietly and privately. She did not get that luxury. The cameras were always watching. The press was always waiting just around the corner. And yet, somehow, Jenna came through those years not hardened, not bitter, but more human, more empathetic, more deeply grounded in who she actually was, versus who the world had decided it wanted her to be. Then came Henry Hager. Henry came from a different kind of world, politically connected, yes, but far less visible. A University of Virginia graduate with a quiet confidence and a steady, unhurried demeanor that stood in beautiful contrast to the whirlwind that constantly surrounded the Bush family. He and Jenna met through political circles during her father's second presidential campaign. And from the very beginning, there was something strikingly different about the way Henry moved through that high-pressure environment. He was not dazzled by the spectacle. He was focused entirely on the person. For Jenna, that was everything. She had spent years surrounded by people who saw her last name before they ever saw her face. People who wanted proximity to power, to history, to the story. Henry was not one of those people. He saw her, the real her, and that kind of rare clarity is exceptional enough in ordinary life. In the life Jenna Bush was living, it was almost miraculous. Their courtship was slow and wonderfully deliberate. There was no rush, no dramatic public declaration, no grand gesture carefully performed for cameras. It was built instead in the quiet spaces, in conversations that stretched past midnight, in shared values that surfaced naturally over time, in the way two people gradually began to recognize each other not just as partners, but as anchors in a restless sea. By the time Henry proposed in 2007, during a hike through Jenna's grandfather's property in Maine, a deeply personal, family-connected location, it was unmistakably clear that this was not a relationship built on convenience or circumstance. This was built on something profoundly real, but real does not mean easy, and the road ahead would test them in ways that neither of them had fully Anticipated. The wedding was everything you might imagine, and nothing at all like what the press had predicted. In May of 2008, Jenna Bush and Henry Hager were married at her family's Prairie Chapel Ranch in Crawford, Texas, a private, intimate ceremony surrounded only by family and close friends. No massive celebrity guest list, no televised spectacle, just two people, a quiet stretch of Texas land, and a commitment made in front of the people who mattered most to them. The world watched from the outside, straining for a glimpse. Photographs were shared carefully and deliberately. It was, in many ways, a declaration to everyone watching: this is ours, and we will protect it fiercely. But here is what most people did not fully understand about that moment. Jenna was not simply marrying Henry. She was also quietly stepping into an entirely new chapter of her own identity, one that would require her to discover who she was when she was no longer defined by her family name, her father's presidency, or the relentless spotlight that had followed her since childhood. That kind of internal reckoning is invisible from the outside. You cannot photograph it. You cannot capture it in a headline. It happens in the small, ordinary moments: the first morning waking up in a new home, the first argument about something minor that turns out to be about something enormous, the first time you realize that the person you married is also figuring it all out right there alongside you. Henry was building his career in finance and business. Jenna was finding her footing in writing and media. They were two ambitious, driven people trying to build something stable together while the world around them constantly reminded them of everything and everyone they had come from. What made this particular chapter especially complicated was the transition out of the White House years when George W. Bush's presidency ended in January 2009. There was a shift in the family's public life that was both significant and swift. The kind of elaborate infrastructure that surrounds a sitting president, the security details, the constant attention, the relentless forward movement, dissolves almost overnight. And the family that had lived fully inside that extraordinary structure for 8 years suddenly had to find an entirely new kind of normal. For Jenna and Henry, who were newly married and actively building their own life separate from that world, the transition raised its own quiet but pressing questions. What did it truly mean to step out from under that particular kind of shadow? What did real independence actually look like when your entire life had been framed by a legacy as extraordinary as theirs? These are not easy questions. They do not get answered quickly or simply. And the honest truth is that many couples, even deeply loving, deeply committed ones, crack under the invisible weight of this kind of pressure. The pressure of expectation, the pressure of legacy, the pressure of trying to become your own person while still honoring where you came from and who shaped you. Jenna and Henry did not crack, but they did face something that tested them far more personally, more quietly, and more profoundly than anything the cameras ever managed to capture. And that is precisely where the real story begins. There's a particular kind of grief that arrives with wanting something deeply and waiting for it incomplete. Aching silence. Jenna Bush Hager has spoken openly in recent years about the emotional journey she and Henry walked together when trying to grow their family. And while the conversations she has shared on television have been warm and remarkably brave, the full weight of what that experience truly meant, the uncertainty, the vulnerability, the quiet fear, deserves to be told with all the depth that actually carries. After their wedding, Jenna and Henry began imagining the family they so deeply wanted to build. They were hopeful, ready, full of the quiet optimism that newly married couples naturally carry into that particular chapter of life. But hope and readiness do not always align with biology, with timing, or with the plans we make so carefully inside our hearts. The waiting was hard. The uncertainty was harder still. And the particular cruelty of that kind of experience is that it is almost entirely invisible to the people around you. You can be standing in a room full of people who love you completely and still feel utterly, profoundly alone inside the weight of it all. Henry's steadiness during this period was not passive or distant. It was deeply active. It was the kind of presence that shows up not in grand gestures but in small, consistent, unwavering acts of love. Being there at the end of a difficult day, choosing patience when fear would have been the easier path, refusing to allow the weight of disappointment to become the defining tone of their relationship. This is the part of their story that never makes the highlight reel, but it is, perhaps, the most important part of all, because what came next changed everything. In 2013, Jenna and Henry welcomed their first daughter, Mila. The arrival of this little girl, after everything they had quietly carried and endured together, was not simply a joyful moment. It was a transformative one. It was the moment that reoriented absolutely everything. That gave profound new meaning to the patience they had practiced and the love they had so carefully protected. Jenna has described motherhood as something that cracked her open in the very best possible way. And you can hear it vividly in the way she talks about her children, not with the polished language of someone performing emotion for an audience, but with the raw, unguarded honesty of someone who knows exactly how precious something truly is, because they once had no certainty they would ever have it. 2 years later, in 2015, their second daughter, Poppy, arrived to expand their growing family. And then in 2019, their family grew once more with the birth of their son, Hal. 3 children. 3 beautiful expansions of that original, quiet love story, the one that began on a presidential campaign and was sealed on a ranch in Texas. 3 lives that carry forward something painstakingly built through patience, struggle, and an extraordinary, sustained amount of grace. But here is what is so easy to miss when you look at the beautiful family photographs, when you watch Jenna laugh freely on television, when you see Henry standing steady and constant beside her. The life they have today did not arrive effortlessly. It was chosen, again and again, in the hard moments every bit as much as in the beautiful ones. The evolution of Jenna's career during these years is its own remarkable story, and it is completely inseparable from everything she and Henry were building together at home. When Jenna joined the Today Show as a contributor in 2009, she was stepping into a space that would become, over the years that followed, one of the most important professional platforms of her life. Her warmth translated instantly and powerfully. Her ability to connect with guests, with viewers, with the ordinary, deeply felt humanity of every story she told was not manufactured or performed. It came from a life that had been lived fully and felt with remarkable depth. But television at that level is never easy. The hours are punishing and relentless. The preparation is constant and consuming. The emotional labor of showing up present, engaged, and genuinely alive every single day, regardless of whatever is happening in your personal life, requires a kind of discipline that most people dramatically underestimate until they are actually inside it. Jenna was also writing throughout this period. Her books, several of them co-authored with her mother, Laura Bush, explored family, memory, resilience, and the particular, irreplaceable textures of a life lived across generations. Writing, for Jenna, has always been a way of processing the world, a way of making honest sense of experience by placing it carefully into language. And the themes she returns to again and again: love, identity, family, the quiet courage of ordinary people in extraordinary moments, are not accidental choices. They are autobiographical in the deepest, most personal sense. Henry, meanwhile, was building his own career with a focused, deliberately low-profile determination that has always been one of his most defining qualities. He has never sought the spotlight. He has never tried to leverage the family name for personal advantage. He built what he built through his own consistent effort, entirely on his own terms. What is quietly remarkable about Henry Hager is how rarely his name actually appears in the stories people tell about Jenna. And that is not an accident. It is a conscious, deliberate choice. In a world where proximity to fame is routinely treated as currency, Henry has consistently and firmly chosen privacy instead. He has chosen to be a husband and father first, and a public figure absolutely never. And in making that choice, he has created something genuinely rare and precious: a stable, grounded center for a family that exists by virtue of its history alone. In an inherently unstable and high-visibility world, Jenna has spoken about this quality more than once, about what it truly means to be married to someone who does not need the camera, who does not require external validation to feel secure, who shows up in the small daily rituals of family life with the same energy and intention. that others reserve only for their most public, most celebrated moments. That kind of constancy is not dramatic or flashy. It does not make for viral clips or trending headlines on social media, but it is the backbone of everything they have built. It is precisely what allows Jenna to take professional risks, to be vulnerable on national television, to explore the harder and more complicated edges of her own story in public, because she knows, without a shadow of doubt, that there is something unshakable and constant waiting for her at home. There is something deeply countercultural about a man in Henry's position, choosing quiet over visibility, substance over profile, home over spotlight. And the longer you look at it and sit with it, the more you understand that this choice is itself a profound kind of statement about values, about love, about what actually matters when the cameras finally turn away. In 2020, Jenna became co-host of the Today Show's Fourth Hour, a role that significantly elevated her platform and brought with it a new and meaningful level of visibility, responsibility, and creative freedom. It was a major professional milestone, and it arrived right in the middle of one of the most collectively difficult and disorienting periods in modern history. The pandemic reshaped absolutely everything. It collapsed the boundary between public and private life in ways that no one had been remotely prepared for. Suddenly, the world was watching people do their jobs from living rooms, from kitchens, from the messy, beautifully unfiltered spaces of real domestic life. And Jenna, like so many working parents navigating that impossible season, was managing all of it simultaneously. She was hosting a national television program. She was raising 3 young, energetic children. She was managing a household. She was trying to remain fully present in a moment that demanded presence from everyone in ways that felt genuinely impossible to sustain day after exhausting day. What emerged from that difficult period, though, was something completely unexpected: a deeper, more visible authenticity, a genuine willingness to let the imperfection show on camera, a real capacity to say, on a national platform, that this is hard, that I am struggling, that we are all simply trying to figure it out, and to say it entirely without apology or performance. That kind of honesty resonated. It resonated deeply and widely, with viewers who recognized in Jenna something they saw unmistakably in themselves: the gap between the life we carefully present to the world and the life we are actually living behind closed doors. Henry's role in that demanding season of their life was, once again, the kind that never photographs well, but matters enormously in the living of it. He was the steady presence, the practical, grounding support, the person who quietly absorbed the chaos so that Jenna could do what she needed to do. The secret that the title of this story so boldly promised is not a single dramatic revelation. It is something far more interesting than that. It is the accumulated truth of a relationship that has been carefully built, honestly tested, broken open slightly, lovingly repaired, and slowly deepened over and over again, across nearly 2 full decades of real life together. The secret is simply this: Jenna Bush Hager and Henry Hager have never had a perfect love story. They have had a real one, and that distinction matters more than almost anything else. Perfect love stories exist in movies and magazine features and carefully curated social media grids. Real love stories exist in the hard conversations no one photographs, the long seasons of waiting, the moments when you have to consciously choose the relationship again, even when it would honestly be easier not to. Real love stories live in the gap between who you once thought you would become and who you actually are, and in the remarkable grace of having someone standing beside you who loves both versions of you equally and without condition. Jenna has grown into one of the most trusted and beloved voices in American media precisely because she has never pretended. She has never once performed a cleaner, more palatable version of her life for public consumption. And Henry has been the quiet, unshakable foundation that made that level of honesty genuinely possible for her. What they have built together is not merely a family or a career or a public legacy.